Hiya folks, Gomer Pyle here, and this algebra lesson is on factoring by grouping. I teach this lesson before the ax squared part, which is in, you'll see that one in one of the other videos. So I like doing this lesson first, so factoring by grouping is a nice trick. So factor each expression. Typically, factoring by grouping is you take out a group of terms. So can you see they both have an x plus 4 here? So I'm going to highlight those in colors right there. X plus 4s. Can you see now the blue x plus 4s? I'm going to pull out the blue x plus 4s so they come out as 1x plus 4, and then I'm left with the red stuff that's attached with the blue stuff right there. Okay, and that's my answer right there. It is now factored. Remember, factored is something times something that gives me that polynomial right there. Okay, so let's try. So that's your answer right there. I've just factored that. Okay, so here this has y minus 2. This has 2 minus y. I can make this a y minus 2 if I change this to a minus sign out here. Watch what happens, you guys. I'll change this to a minus sign, and what that does is it flips it around inside of there and becomes a y minus 2. Now these both have a y minus 2's, so if I assign those colors blue, y minus 2, y minus 2, and I'm going to pull out the blue y minus 2's, and when I do that I'm left with the red stuff that's attached with them, 3y squared minus 5. Okay, now I factored that. Okay, alright, how about this guy right here? Okay, now what I'm going to do here is think of these two guys. What can I GCF out of these two guys? Can you see I can pull an x squared out of both of those guys right there? And that's just out of those two. And then look at these two guys. What can you pull out of these two guys? Hopefully you can see I can pull an 8 out of both those guys. Watch what happens, you guys. I'm going to pull a x squared out of both of these, a blue x squared, I think, and I'm going to pull a 8 out of both of these right here. Whoops, I pulled a red. So I pulled the red x squared out right there, and I'm left with, when I pulled x squared out of x cubed, I'm left with x. When I pulled the x squared out of that, I'm left with 2. When I pull an 8 out of that, I'm left with x, and pull an 8 out of that, I'm left with 2. And check it out, they both have the blue x plus 2's. So I can pull the blue x plus 2's out, and I'm left with the red stuff right there. Okay, and if I FOIL that out, it'd get me back up to here. Okay, so now it is factored right there. All right, so try that with this one right here. Okay, out of these two guys right here, I'm going to group these two guys together. Let's see, did I do that right there? Yeah. What I did is I grouped these two guys together, and I pulled a 4y out of both of those. When I pull a 4y out, I'm left with y minus 3. Remember, think about redistributing this 4y back through. If I re-put that back through, it'd take me right back up here. And if I pull a 5 out of both of these, I'm left with y minus 3. And again, if I put this 5 back through and distributed it back through, it'd get me right back up to that right there. Okay, now they both have the red y minus 3's, and so when I pull that red y minus 3 out, I'm left with the blue stuff that's attached with it, 4y plus 5. Okay, factoring by grouping is fun, you guys. All right, okay, I can pull a 2 out of both these guys and an m squared out of both of these guys. All right. And what I'm going to do on these guys is shuffle these guys around. I want to put the 3m first and the minus 15 second, so I just moved them around. And then I'm going to pull a 3 out of both of those goes right there. Okay, so check it out. I'm going to pull a 2m squared out and pull the 3 out. When I pull the 2m squared out, I'm left with m minus 5. When I pull a 3 out, I'm left with m minus 5. Now they both have a blue m minus 5 in there, and I'm left with 2m squared plus 3. Okay, and there's my answer right there. Okay, all right, let's try this guy. All right, I'm going to group the first two together and group the second two together. Okay, and then I can pull an x squared out of both of these guys. And I can't pull anything out, but you can always pull a 1 out. So I'm going to pull a 1 out of that, and when I pull a 1 out of that, it's still x plus 3. Okay, so now they both have the blue x plus 3's. I pull that out, and you're left with this x squared plus 1. The trick was the plus 1 right there. That's the only thing I can pull out. That's your trick right there. That's the only hang up right there. All right. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to solve these guys. So let's go ahead and solve this. Okay, so let's factor this. Can you see I can GCF a w out of all of those? So if I pull a w out of all those, I'm left with w squared minus 8w minus 9. And then we do what we did in the last lesson, you guys. Factors of this number, negative 9, that add to this number, negative 8. hopefully you can see it's negative 9 times a positive 1. Okay, then we set this factor equal to 0, this factor equal to 0, and this factor equal to 0. It's called the zero product property. Okay, so when I do that, w equals 0, w equals 9, because I add 9 to both sides, and here I'd subtract 1 from both sides, and I get w equals negative 1. All right, let's try that with this one here. Okay, here I have to make it equal to 0, so I'm going to add 24x to both sides because I want it to equal 0. And then I'm going to GCF a 3x out of all of those. And when I pull a 3x out of all those, I'm left with x squared plus 6x plus 8. Factors of 8 that add to 6 are 4 and 2. All right, now I get the zero product property. Set this factor equal to 0, this one equal to 0, this one equal to 0, and then solve for x, okay? So when 3x equals 0, x equals 0. When x plus 4 equals 0, I get negative 4. When x plus 2 equals 0, I get negative 2. Okay, so here 6x cubed plus 3x squared minus 8x minus 4. I'm going to GCF out of these two guys a 3x squared. And watch out, I'm going to pull a negative out. I think I did that here. Yeah, I did. Check it out. If I put parentheses around that, if I pull a negative out of that, that changes to a positive. And if I pull a negative out of that, that's going to change that to a positive. Think of this, you guys. Think if I redistributed this negative back through, I'd get a negative 8x, and then I'd get a negative 4. Okay, so what I did is I pulled a negative out before. I always pull that sign out right there. Now I'm going to pull a 3x squared out of that, and I'm going to pull a 4 out of both of those right there. So when I do that, I'm left with 2x plus 1 in both of those, so I can pull the 2x plus 1s out of both of those, and I'm left with times the red stuff, 3x minus 4. Now I set this factor equal to 0 and set this factor equal to 0. All right, and when I do that, I'm going to subtract 1 here, subtract 1. Here I'm going to add 4 and add 4. And then now I'm going to divide by 2 here, divide by 2, divide by 3, divide by 3. So I get x equals negative 1/2, or x equals a positive 3/4. All right, and if you're in my class, I would assign that for your homework. Okay, take care, you guys.